When Vladimir Putin announced the military operation in Ukraine, most people thought it was to liberate Donbass, which is the eastern part of Ukraine, which is disputed. But there were attacks on the southern coast, on cities like Odessa, Mariupol, and Berdyansk, which have nothing to do with the ongoing insurgency in Donbass. Russian naval fleets have been firing surface-to-surface missiles for days now from the Black Sea. The question is, why? Why does Putin want control of these southern port cities? On Crux Decode this week, how control of warm water ports and unbridled access to the Black Sea is also one of the strategic objectives of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Russia has the longest coastline in the world. It's about 40,000 kilometers long. That is 5 times bigger than the coastline of India. But most of this Russian coast is in the Arctic Ocean, where waters, of course, are frozen for about half the year. Which basically means that you cannot use these ports in the Arctic Sea to dock ships, and as a result, mercantile trade is very minimal from these ports. To be able to dock large container ships, Russia needs warm water ports. That is where trade can happen all around the year, and that is where the Black Sea comes into the picture. Ukraine has a very long coast. It has a coast along the Black Sea which is over 1,000 kilometers long, and more importantly, it connects to the Mediterranean Sea. A third of all global trade passes through the Mediterranean every year. One of the biggest warm water ports in this region is Sevastopol, which is in Crimea. Crimea is uniquely placed with the Black Sea on the one side and the Sea of Azov on the other. In 2014, Putin launched an offensive and captured Crimea. Now, Russia controls the biggest warm water port in the region. That's not all. The Sevastopol naval base also used to house about 3/4 of Ukraine's naval fleet. Russia took away all those ships, the repair yards, the helicopters, and even any soldiers who were willing to fight for Moscow. Now, because of its unique geography, Ukraine makes for a perfect case for a big neighbor with a large naval fleet to bully a smaller one. And that is what has been happening since 2014. There is only one way in and out of the Black Sea. Russia regularly sends its ships and its submarines in and out of the sea. So basically, entry into the Black Sea from the Mediterranean is from the ports of Bosporus and Dardanelles. Now, back in 1936, the Montreux Convention gave Turkey exclusive powers to decide which ships are allowed to pass through the ports of Bosporus and Dardanelles from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea and vice versa. Countries that sit on the Black Sea have unlimited access, whereas countries that are not there, non-resident countries, may only send ships for a limited period of time, and also they're limited by the size of the ship. So very large ships cannot go through because the area is very narrow. Now, encircling this precarious waterway are 6 different countries. There's Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Georgia, and Russia. Now, 3 of these countries are NATO members. 2 others, which is Ukraine and Georgia, want to join the alliance. And then, of course, there is Russia, for whom NATO is anathema. Now, which is why you can see why Vladimir Putin is getting nervous about Ukraine joining NATO. Now, in addition to Bulgaria, Turkey, and Romania, if Ukraine were to also join NATO, that means a majority of countries that sit along this narrow waterway between the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea, and eventually from the Black Sea onto the Mediterranean Sea, that would turn out to be extremely a dangerous proposition for Russia and Russia's maritime interests. So which is why you go back to the 2014 invasion of Crimea. One of the things that the invasion of Crimea did for Russia was it gave Russia control of both sides of what is called the Kirk Strait. Now, the Kirk Strait is a narrow stretch of water that leads from the Black Sea on the one side to the Sea of Azov. Now, the Crimean Peninsula juts out as a piece of land bang in between these two seas. And the Kirk Strait is that small waterway connecting these two seas. So as a result, for example, at some points on the Kirk Strait, the width of this waterway is just as low as 3 kilometers. Barely a couple of ships can pass together at the same time. What this has done is, it's given the Russian Navy absolute powers to control which ships can go in through the Kirk Strait into the Sea of Azov and which ships can come out. What happened as a result is that Russia controls land both on the east and the west side of the Kirk Strait. That makes it easier for the Russian naval fleet to routinely, from time to time, harass, block, or even take Ukrainian ships as hostages. What it also did was to throw into jeopardy Ukraine's legal claims about its territorial waters. Now, Ukraine, even today, even after it's lost Crimea and would likely lose Donbass, it still says it has legal claims to the Sea of Azov. The problem is, it doesn't have a navy that can enforce those rules on the ground, or that can enforce those legal territorial claims on ground, or more likely on water. What this has also done is it has significantly complicated Ukraine's claims to its territorial waters within the Black Sea. Now, Russia controls, like I said, the Crimean Peninsula, which is bang in the middle of this tiny stretch of water, the Kirk Strait, between the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Now, in normal course of things, in pre-2014, this particular set of territorial waters were clearly Ukrainian. Ukraine had full legal rights to these territorial waters. But now that that particular land, that particular peninsula, Crimea, has gone to the Russians, and the Russians control land that's on both east and the west side of Crimea, they get to decide which of the ships that go in and which of the ships that go out. Now, Ukraine has lost its ability to enforce those legal claims out at sea. So that explains the amphibious assault that we're seeing that's been going on in the southern coast of Ukraine. So port cities like Odessa, Mariupol, Berdyansk, these have all been bombarded for a few days now, when they have nothing to do with the reality of what's going on in Donbass or the stated objective that Vladimir Putin said when he went out to invade Ukraine, and that was to quote-unquote liberate Donbass. Now, the bombardment of these southern port cities is a scenario which Russia has been laying the groundwork for a number of years now, certainly since 2014, even before that, and Ukraine has been training to defend against this very same scenario since the Crimean annexation. Unfortunately, from whatever evidence we've seen over the last few days of the Russian invasion, it seems like the Ukrainian naval fleet has not been able to push back.